Assalamu alaikum, fam. Hope you're doing fantastic. Let's continue our reading of Friedrich Nietzsche. Alright, so what's interesting about him is that reading through this book, you'll begin to see a bit of his personality, and you hear a lot of people talk about him, right? And it's always good to be familiar with the names that are mentioned quite a lot in many classes: history classes, literature classes, creative writing classes, philosophy classes, German history classes, right? So you're going to hear about him quite extensively, and actually being familiar with his works will help you to be able to communicate his ideas effectively while also becoming very well read and educated in a nice way. So go ahead and listen to this as you're washing the dishes, you're cutting up some veggies for dinner, you're playing with your cat, whatever it is you're doing. Go ahead, or listening on your commute, which is usually how most people listen to it. So let's begin. We're in part 5. When Zarathustra had spoken these words, he beheld the people again and was silent. There they stand, he said to his heart. There they laugh. They do not understand me. I am not the mouth for these ears. Must one smash their ears before they learn to listen with their eyes? Learn to listen with their eyes. That's interesting. So to see it and to hear makes it more concrete. What do you think he means by that? Must one clatter like kettle drums and preachers of repentance? That's funny. Or do they believe only the stammer? So, clatter versus stammering. Very interesting choice of words there. They have something of which they are proud. What do they call that which makes them proud? Education, they call it, distinguishes them from goat herds. That is why they do not like to hear the word contempt applied to them. Hey, that's a good point, yeah. The more educated sometimes feel like you can't have contempt with them because they've distinguished themselves as academically superior. Sort of smugness, right? Let me then address their pride. Let me then speak to them of what is most contemptible, but that is the last man. And thus spoke Zarathustra to the people. The time has come for man to set himself a goal. The time has come for man to plant the seed of his highest hope. His soil is still rich enough, but one day this soil will be poor and domesticated, and no tall tree will be able to grow in it. So here we got a lot of analogies going on here. So to set your goal. Well, a seed is definitely a goal to get the tree, right? So the soil is rich enough. In the soil, there's nutrients that have to supply and sustain the root system, which helps the trunk of the tree be firm and stable, not to be bending, and then eventually as it grows out, it'll snap and collapse at the base. So here, your family tree, your tree of knowledge, the very deep symbolism of a tree and plants and soil, is definitely important, because some would argue that, the analogies of the peasant farmer class as the soil, and then your rulers are supposed to be the sort of trunk base, and then their offspring be the branches, and then the wise people are the leaves because they come and fall and they blow away. But everything depends upon the soil to fuel the tree's existence. If you've ever seen trees that have gotten sick, right, because of the infestation in the soil or lack of nutrients in the soil, you'll begin to understand this, especially if you don't put cow manure or chicken manure, compost, stuff like that around the tree. It's really going to make it harder for the tree to survive, right? You have to really nerd out on how trees can stay healthy over time to really get this type of potent example. But I think it's a familiar analogy we're all familiar with. Because he said, plant the seed of his highest hope. Well, how do you get to your highest hope? The tree is like growing ever up into the sky. Think of a redwood tree, right? Some of them are extremely tall. I've seen them. They've grown over years. So to reach the sky, to shoot for your goals, you have to have a firm base, because the trees, if they are not firmly rooted within a nice, rich, dense, healthy, moist soil, it's going to be hard for them, right? At least for the trees that I'm familiar with. And it is fascinating to look at what would be the examples anthropomorphized of soil and trees concerning humans, right? And the social structures. Alas, the time is coming when man will no longer shoot the arrow of his longing beyond man, and the string of his bow will have forgotten how to whir. So here it's like people will not even know how to set a goal and to look at the bullseye and head towards it. They'll kind of just be, why go ahead? I can stay stagnant right here. Ultimate peak of slothness, right? No ambition, no drive, no force. Very sad. I say unto you, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. Here, that's right, poetic. So chaos in oneself. A star is bright. A little star. It's hot. It has its time. Stars die. Stars are born in a nursery. And is it the nebula? No, I forgot what they're called. The nursery in the galaxies where stars are born. But it is a little bit of chaos, right? A little bit of chaos. You can't be dead inside. A little bit of chaos adds variety and momentum and opportunities for knowledge to arrive, right? So think about how this analogy of star is presented. Dancing with the Stars is a TV show. Hollywood, you get a star on the Walk of Fame. This language play of actual heavenly bodies, right, with the everyday common theater language matched with creativity and the vast sublimeness of space really makes his examples come out even more. So for you to have a very good actress, a very good showgirl, a very good someone exemplary like Marlon Brando, right? He was a bit of a unique figure. He's not just this dry, boring person. He's got something going on which makes you want to keep looking at him. He shines and shines until he is no more, right? Till the star dies, expires, right? So this is very unique to say. To give birth to a dancing star, you must have chaos within yourself. Not to be overly eccentric, but nerdy people quite often have little tics about them that doesn't make them as boring as others, right? So he has a point. I say unto you, you still have chaos in yourselves. So it's like he's really trying to awaken people. He's really trying to get them to see that you do have something in you. Alas, the time is coming when man will no longer give birth to a star. So the killing of creativity. Making everyone be the same. Making everyone a cog in machine. Tired, exhausted, plain, dead. This is something very interesting to think about. When culture, when art is no longer allowed to flourish, and diversity of ideas is no longer prevalent, and the uniqueness of yourself is no longer within the means of not excess, but not dead, that's when you're going to have a very strange time of new things coming forward and exerting themselves into their being, right? Alas, the time of most despicable man is coming. He that is no longer able to despise himself. Aha! The most despicable time of a human is when they don't despise themselves. They're not. If you don't despise something in yourself, you're not trying to perfect yourself. You're satisfied with what you are. You're reveling in your own mediocrity, that you're masquerading as some type of refined thing. That doesn't mean you are obsessing with perfection and becoming mentally ill by picking at yourself to death, but you're also not being a couch potato saying everything is fine, I don't need to perfect my mind, I don't need to perfect my body, I don't need to strive to perfect anything, I'm just fine where I'm at. That's why you see this kind of dystopian, fat slob, lazy pig who lives off the government and has the IQ of a rock, right? That is something that you'd be so despicable. You're no longer despising yourself, because to despise means you want to change. Because truly, to have an element of despising yourself can push you forward, right? Someone is 400 pounds, they despise themselves, they might be motivated to work out. Once they start making excuses, to like doing too much fat acceptance, then you're going to get into a problem, right? Or the reverse of that, someone is anorexic and they despise any type of part of themselves and they starve themselves to death, and they're like a French model who is this walking skeleton and she's gone off the wall and she's nuts. So there's a balance here. Very, very deep, point to meditate upon for that. Behold, I show you the last man. What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star? Thus asked the last man, and he blinks. The earth has become small, and it hops the last man, who makes everything small. His race is as ineradicable as the flea beetle. The last man lives longest. We have invented happiness, says the last man, and they blink. They have left the regions where it was hard to live, for one needs warmth. One still loves one's neighbor and rubs against him, for one needs warmth. Now this is a very cool example. The earth has become small. It's almost like nothing left to explore, just staying within this certain realm, not really propelling anything beyond that. That is a very interesting way to put it. Flea beetle. I wonder why he used flea beetle. So we have invented happiness. To me, that reminds me today of the marketing. We'll show you what happiness is. It's shopping. It's going into debt, right? It's getting massive amounts of Botox shoved into your face. Getting a plastic butt. I mean, come on, Now here, it says they left the regions where it's hard to live. Vigorousness of the agrarian lifestyle and being out amongst the elements. It's difficult, but maybe more lasting than being a comfortable slob in the city that's compacted by this depressive machinery of just like, instead of being out in the open and realizing you may not have, the glitz and glamour, but you're still there. And this element of your neighbor, rubbing shoulders against your neighbor for warmth, not literal warmth is like in the wintertime you have to be kind of close to certain people. When you're in a group you can feel each other's body heat, but also this is an example of communication, of endearment, of affection, of friendship, right, coming into play here. So warmth in the coldest, darkest moments can be a sort of invigorating life source for you in certain times where you don't want to be a hermit that's isolated, right? You're still out in the elements, but you feel the warmth of your neighbor. Whereas even in the city, like in New York back in the day, you'd be walking, you're so crowded and you're next to your neighbor, but you're still far away and it's not exactly warmth. You're overcrowded and condensed into a small space. Very interesting example here. There they laugh, they do not understand me, I am not the mouth for these ears. Now here it's like, learn to listen with their eyes. So he just, mentioned these dancing stars, the last man, that there will be a time where people won't even despise themselves anymore. Rich soil. Really, really powerful examples. We invented happiness. What is creation? He asks, what is creation? And then that says, we invented happiness. Kind of interesting, right? Makes you think. What is love? And then he mentions the need for warmth. really playing with this here. What do you think? The spoke Zarathustra.